Okay, so we took part in last week's LCS with Virtual World, and I kind of want to talk about why I think this deck is amazing, what I personally really enjoy about it, and what are some of the advantages this deck has over other decks in the format. The first thing that sets this deck apart from other decks is the accessibility. And I don't mean the real-life accessibility, so the physical cards, but the gameplay accessibility. Everything searches everything in this archetype. Whenever you're able to resolve one of the monster effects, you get automatically any other monster of the archetype to your hand. This inherently is a good starting point for any deck, doesn't necessarily make it broken, because the cards you're able to resolve are only as good as the end board you can facilitate, obviously. But in the case of this deck, you get both. And the other thing that personally I really enjoy about the deck, it is the first archetype in a long time that in itself works fine. You don't need any other archetypes like Dogmatica or Eldritch to make this deck competitive. And in fact, just a couple of weeks back, I released a video complaining about how currently every deck needs to run multiple engines to function competitively. I really think that design-wise, Virtual World takes a step in the right direction, especially if we see VFD and other problematic cards, of course, get banned on the next list. Two things before we start with the deck list. First thing, this is not one-to-one the deck list I used for the LCS. In hindsight, I did a few poor choices, so this is sort of an adjusted list I made over the past few days. Second thing, if you don't know any of the card effects, you can just check out the link in the description down below where I have the Dueling book deck linked. You can just click it and check out all the cards that you don't know. So let's get right in. We play Ashe over Nibiru in the main deck. The reason is Nibiru is not good versus any good player that plays Zodiac, Prankets or Virtual World, which was the case in the LCS. And if you play against Dragonlink or Infernoble, you need 2 or more hand traps to stop the deck usually. So for this deck specifically, you can only fit so many hand traps, so Nibiru in the main doesn't really make sense. Against very specific matchups you can side it, but I felt that Ashe was sort of a mid-range option, which also gave you sort of an advantage in the mirror match, for example, in Prank Kits, all of these like sort of popular decks right now. Gamma is insane in this deck, literally. You can trigger this very often on your turn too. We have a lot of baits like Desires, the Kinlong, and especially if you play the Foolish Goods. What is so interesting about Gamma in this deck is that the driver is level 6, so if you're able to resolve the Gamma on your turn, you can use the driver for level 9 synchro material. So I feel like if you're able to resolve the Gamma on your turn, it's pretty much game over anyway. Talent, broken, I don't know how some people weren't playing this card. Like personally, I feel like this card is insane. Desires, you don't care about banishing, it's literally a free draw too. Also, when I started playing the deck, I thought, why are you playing the Gamma package with Desires? Doesn't make any sense. If you banish the driver, it's pretty much dead, the whole engine. But actually, Nyan Nyan, because of its effect where you can shuffle back a banished card, it doesn't really matter if you banish the driver. All of the Virtual Worlds we played 3 times, except for the Nyan Nyan. There's definitely an argument to be made why you should play it 3 times. I felt like with the Foolish Goods, your deck sort of becomes a bit more consistent, and I did want to keep the deck at 40. I did want to play the Metal Force Fusion, that was a given for me, also because I sided the World Dino Wrestling field spell, which I think is sort of a hidden tech right now, but the Metal Force Fusion I'll get to in a bit, but I felt like the Nyan Nyan at 2 was fine, even though it is sort of a starter if you have any other Virtual World monster with it. I'm still not too sure. There's definitely an argument to be made for both sides, I feel like. Emergency Teleport, free extender. And then the Foolish Goods, because of the World Dino Wrestling mainly, but also Metal Force Fusion is really great in this deck. I don't know how people were playing the Foolish Goods, but not the Metal Force Fusion. That didn't make any sense to me. Because then the Foolish Goods becomes just useless if you can already play. And if you can't play, you can just put the Kinlong and search any monster, which in itself doesn't really get your plays going. But if you have any other card, like it sort of starts something. So I feel like this was pretty good. Metal Force Fusion, you can discard off the Kinlong if you happen to draw it. So I feel like the Metal Force Fusion was insane. Like I played against Jibriel. For those of you who know him, he's a really good player. Also makes a bit of content if you want to check him out. We both played in the mirror match, and he also said he played Metal Force Fusion and he hadn't seen anyone else play it yet, and he felt it was insane. Definitely felt this card was very, very good the whole day. Like, if you can discard this with the Kinlong, you get a free draw essentially. It sort of feels like Engage, so even though it's obviously not Engage, but sort of feels like this. For the extra deck, there's not a whole lot of room or space to talk about card choices. I feel like the card choices are getting more and more settled right now. Cloud Castle, because it lets you play through Nibiru. Then all of these are sort of mandatory, like Coral Dragon, Croco Dragon, the Stardust Charge Warrior. Don't forget that this card can attack all your special summoned all of your opponent's special summon monsters once each. The Vermilion, I don't know if everyone played this card, but I felt like this was insane. Also to be able to go for the option to pop your own Kinlong, maybe in some weird scenario, but also just for sort of clearing your opponent's field. This was really nice. Juju actually won me a game, weirdly enough. At first I thought this would never come up, this card, but then it won me a game when Zodiac couldn't out this card before the battle phase, and I only had like 1,000 life left, so this was pretty good. Chen is a given. Ptolemy, the M7 is nice. Like, I think that sometimes you just want to like get back a Lancia or another hand trap or maybe a tuner like Lulu for the follow-up. You can make Zeus, you can put Gaia above it, so it's really good. Zeus, obvious broken card. Gaia, just for Zeus abuse. Utopia Beyond, I didn't really know about this card at the LCS, so I put it in hindsight, but puts all of your opponent's attacks to 0, so you can run over them with Stardust Charge Warrior potentially, but I don't know if this ever really comes up. Sometimes maybe to push for a lot of damage if maybe they already paid 2,000 with Anaconda or something. Phantom Fortress was really nice. Outs Dragoon, I don't know, can banish a card of your opponent's graveyard, maybe sometimes this can come up. I think this was overall just a nice sort of alternative route you could go if you didn't want to go VFD, or maybe where VFD wasn't too good in the matchup. Then Break Sword, you can make an argument for the Bamboozling, but I felt the Bamboozling was not too good at playing around Nibiru. It's also the reason I didn't play the Zolkeen package, which I tested at first, but then I realized, wow, like you need an incredibly broken hand to be able to make Crystal Wing plus VFD. Same with this, you need an incredibly broken hand to make VFD plus the Bamboozling, so I didn't really feel like it was necessary. Also, I found myself in more scenarios during the tournament where it was sort of become this weird grind game where it would become like turn 3, turn 5, turn 7 even, and yeah, I felt like this card was amazing. Also, it can pop your Kinlong, which is just really nice. VFD twice because sometimes you get Nibiru'd, and you just wanna be able to go for a second one in the turn afterwards, especially with Cloud Castle. For the side deck, this is pretty much, you can pretty much put everything in there what you feel like, but I feel like one of the staples is the Dino Wrestling with the Pancratops. I feel like these cards were insane. Like literally, this won me a match versus Zodiac alone, where I was able to make the Foolish Goods happen and just Dino Wrestling him with Pancratops, and then pretty much won me the match. But for hand traps, I just played Nibiru and Lancia. Lancia really good in the side deck for the mirror match. Actually, I didn't play the Lancia during the LCS. Now that I think about it, Jibril actually used it against me, and I was like, oh damn, this card is actually insane in the mirror match. I didn't realize that so many people were going to be on Virtual Worlds 2 and that this card could be an option for the side deck, but it is how it is. Nibiru for any matchup this could be like viable or reasonable against. And then Gamma Seal I felt against Dragon Link would be pretty good, even though I know that some Dragon Link players, they tend to equip the Buster Lock to the Levineer or the Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, but still felt like, I don't know, you kind of have to out the Dragon the Buster Lock somehow. So yeah, the Pancratops, obviously, we already talked about it, and Feather Duster and Twin Twister. Twin Twister versus Prankets in the Stamper phase was pretty much the only reason. Maybe Shadol Schism also in the Stamper phase, should I happen to play against that deck, but wasn't the case for me. Still, against Prankets once, it was insane in the Stamper phase, so I feel like this choice definitely paid off. Let's get into a discussion. I definitely think this deck brings something new to the table in terms of gameplay and variety. Also, when it comes to longevity, this deck has a long way to go in Blazing Vortex additional cards that are, by the way, just as powerful as the currently existing ones are going to be released. Also, many people are already comparing this deck to Salamangreat, not because of the amount of cards that get released, but sort of because this deck also has like this mid-range feeling where some cards are really combo-ish, like the Lulu or the Lao Lao, but then some other cards are like just like trading one for one, like the Chuchi Trap or the Kinlong. In general, I have really enjoyed playing this archetype in the past week. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think of it and what are maybe some of the card choices we can change in the deck list. Anyway, I hope you loved it. See you.